Okay. So good morning. Welcome to Shape Your Chamber. There's a few more people kind of slowly coming. So before we dive into Shape Your Chamber today, I am inviting some kind of myofascial release ball. So if you have some kind of ball, I highly encourage you to go find that. I think the tennis balls work amazing. I can't seem to find my actual real myofascial release ball that I got from a physiotherapist. So I'm using my son's tennis ball today. And it would be good for you to have some blocks. So if you have some yoga blocks and a blanket, any kind of blanket. And if you do have a bolster, I'd also encourage a bolster today, okay? If not, the blocks and the blankets will work fine. So you can gather any props that you might have at home. Okay, so if this is your first time coming to Shape Your Chamber, welcome. And for those of you returning, so good to see all of you. So as I've mentioned to many of you before, Shape Your Chamber is an exploration of our bodies, but in particular, just letting a few people in. In particular, Shape Your Chamber is the doorway into connecting our bodies and our minds, our pranic systems and the heart, and really how all these different layers of who and what we are just a reflection of the cosmos, and how our bodies are a beautiful medium to communicate with this beautiful, collective consciousness. So today's Shape Your Chamber is an exploration of our fascia, and how we have quite a lot of room to really come in and create healthy environments for our fascia. So let's begin. So for those of you I just let in, as I mentioned just a few moments ago, you'll need some kind of ball. If you don't have it, you can at least take notes on what we're doing, and we can use the block for some parts of it, okay? So if you don't have a ball, we'll make it work. And a block or two, so your yoga blocks, some kind of blanket, yeah? And if you have a bolster, that will also kind of make your practice extra juicy. But if you don't have a bolster, no worries, your blanket and blocks do. And so just to give a little outline for today, I am probably today a little more than others, spend some time kind of going over the research on fascia, and also some of the theory on fascia, and then we'll dive into our practice. When we dive into our practice, it does help me a lot if you do position your camera, just so I can see your bodies, in particular for today, so that I can see that you might have the ball or the blocks placed appropriately. At the end, I'll definitely open up the session for questions. And then also, before we dive into the practice, I'll also open up the floor for questions, okay? So if you have any questions, just make some notes, and I wanna leave some room for even just comments too, if you have any insights you'd like to share, okay? All right, amazing. Okay, so one of my favorite pioneers of fascia, Tom Myers, which I'm sure many of you have heard of Tom's work. He really is shaped a lot of the research out there when it comes to fascia. Okay, just letting someone else in regard to fascia and its relation to yoga. And really, he's been a really beautiful pioneer in bridging some of the real medical research on fascia and bringing it more into like on a really practical level of movement. So I love how Tom Myers refers to fascia as like, you know, the one, you know, like you can't separate your body into parts because of fascia. And fascia is this beautiful, we can call it matrix, as many of you have referred to fascia as matrix, but it is a network that allows for interconnection. And I just want to use these words for a moment because these words do really reflect the one, you know, this universal cosmos. So the fascia, it allows for interconnection, it allows for communication, it invites interaction, and it is like the platform of impulses are spread through this beautiful matrix. Ida Wolf, another pioneer of working with fascia, calls fascia the organ of structure. You know, and we spend so much time, you know, working our health around so many of our organs, you know, our heart, our lungs, our liver, our kidneys, and to begin really putting our perception and looking at your fascia like an organ. I'm going to invite you to begin looking at it that way, and that our fascia needs that much attention as we put into our lungs and our heart and kidneys and liver and spleen and pancreas and gallbladder, you know, these very important pieces, you know. Well, now the fascia, this amazing matrix, begin to think of it as an organ, and without it, we wouldn't survive without it. Okay, so one of the reasons they call it, and I know for many of you this is a little review, and for some of you maybe not. So this fascia, this matrix, it surrounds every muscle and then all the fibers within a muscle, your bones, your organs, your nerves, your veins, and the fascia, it's soft, it's dense, it's shapeless yet full of form. It's fibrous, yet at the same time it's plasmic. So it really is, it's really all of it. So we'll dive a little bit more into what I mean by that. So some of the primary purposes of the fascia, you know, one, it insulates. Two, it like really provides structure and form. Three, it links, so it links your body parts. It literally links one fiber to the next. It connects groups of muscles. It connects groups of fibers within one muscle. It is, one of its primary purposes is to enhance movement. So in order for us to move, muscle groups need to slide and glide so that movement is smooth, and so movement isn't painful. Without the fascia, we wouldn't be able to have this gliding action. So one, we have to use an incredible amount more of exertion, a lot more effort to actually create any kind of movement if we didn't have that lubricated gliding of muscle fibers. And two, it'd just be incredibly painful. So it lubricates, it supports function, like to actual create movement. And then it provides communication. So these are some of the primary purposes. And what I'd like to do just for a moment here is to just share, I'll send this to all of you, but just to share a little picture. I kind of find this a great picture to understand how the fascia is broken up in our muscles. So let me just share my screen for a moment. Okay, can all of you see that image? Yeah? Okay, I know it's not the best sharing here. But what I want you to see is how, if you can see inside these little pieces, groups within a muscle, you can see that there's little groups within groups within groups. And these little, anything you see white is the tissue, is the fascia. So it's surrounding groups of fibers, and then you have thicker groups and wider groups, and it's all layered inside. And this is just an example of the fascia surrounding muscles. So maybe you can even quite to imagine to think of how the fascia surrounds the organs or the capillaries or the vertebrae and bones. So that's just one little picture there for you to get a visual of how this, how intricate this fascia is and how multi-layered it is. Okay, so the other thing that's really important is that the fascia allows for the firing to happen. So because it has nerve endings, an incredible amount of nerve endings in it. And so the brain, sends the messages to fire a muscle through the fascia. Because the fascia has so many nerve endings, it's through the nerves that are an extension of your nervous system into your fascia that allows us to have our proprioception. It's the nerve endings inside your fascia that allows your body to know where it is in space. And also through that, it gives your sense of perception of your external environment. So what a lot of the research is showing is that the fascia also helps shape our reality, like what we are perceiving around us. Okay, so when we move, we create this gliding action, and the gliding action provides lubrication, and the lubrication is what keeps the fascia incredibly healthy and more cell development, and keeps it hydrated. When we have healthy fascia, which I'll get into in a few moments on why our fascia can become unhealthy. But basically, one of the main outcomes of unhealthy fascia is it becomes dehydrated. And when your fascia is dehydrated, begin to think of your fascia as like this. I feel like I have so much Velcro in my house because of my three kids, but it becomes like Velcro. So like, when you try to drag something over Velcro, it kind of like sticks, right? And it's just not smooth. And that's what happens to your fascia when it becomes dehydrated. It's not like this gliding action anymore. And so then therefore it impacts movement. And that's how people get stuck in their body, or it becomes painful because of the fact that the fascia is not gliding so smoothly. And then from there, we begin to lack movement in certain muscle groups, depending on how much of the fascia is impacted. So if it's just a small piece of the fascia, then, you know, if it's just a small layer, you know, then maybe it's not going to impact the gliding so much, and you can really direct your myofascial releasing, for example. But if you don't focus on movement and healing the fascia kind of immediately, then it begins to spread throughout the other muscle groups around it, and then it begins to go into the other compartments and begins to impact the other types of tissue. I'm going to get into the types of fascia, but it might begin to spread to the various layers and types of fascia if you don't take care of the Velcro-like, dehydrated, unhealthy fascia. So when you lack movement, and I know many of you might know this already, in one part of the body, you know, your brain is still telling your body to move your arm, and your brain is still telling your body to take a step forward. So therefore, other muscles will step in to create the movement. And then therefore what happens is certain muscle groups become kind of the powerhouse, and they overcompensate. They're actually doing work that they shouldn't be doing. Or maybe they shouldn't be the main dominant control of a certain movement, and now they are. And so with the working of certain muscle groups, that's where we, unfortunately, we have overcompensation, and then that is what leads to kind of a weakening of muscle groups, and then from there, injury. It's kind of like a wear and tear, and it also creates pain when you're overcompensating with certain muscle groups. But lucky for us, we had these kind of amazing magicians come in and help us, like osteopaths, massage therapists, chiropractors, acupuncture, and this amazing practice of yoga, where these therapists and practices really look at, you know, the human being as a whole organism, which is very important, which they say modern medicine really forgets that that's what we are. We're one organism. And so when we look at these amazing magicians and practices that look at the whole, we begin to invite the communication to open up again, work with pressure points, and we work with the fascia to help clear. And we also have like a lot of sports therapists that also are very trained in looking at the fascia as one. Okay. So as I mentioned, I just want to spend a few moments looking at why fascia becomes unhealthy, so that we can really work with health prevention. You know, when I used to work in the health sector, this was in Canada, and, you know, people really kind of, you know, congratulate Canada on the way that they approach health, because they put a lot of funding into health prevention. To spend time, like, you know, doctors spend time educating their patients on how to prevent unhealthy outcomes. So one, it can save the health sector millions of dollars with healthcare costs, but also it does give people the power to step in and realize that we have all the tools we need to take care of ourselves. So, you know, as all of you I'm sure know, is that stress is one of the number one impacts on our fascia and unhealthy fascia. The hormones, the endocrine system secretes these hormones that create all kind of inflammation, these stress hormones that create inflammation in your fascia. and congestion and pressure and blockages, and from there dehydration and lack of movement, lack of firing, and impulses to the brain and the nervous system that basically keep your body awake and stimulate the growth of your cells and so forth. Trauma is another major impact on your fascia, especially like chronic trauma, repetitive trauma, psycho-emotional trauma, but also physical trauma. And, you know, there's a huge movement right now in somatics. And one of the main backbones of somatics, you know, is this exploration of trauma and releasing trauma that's kind of in body. So trauma also creates all kinds of blockages in the fascia and the tissue. And then we have repetitive stress injuries, so certain kinds of movement that's not healthy for the body that can create unhealthy fascia. The diet, ancestry, so sometimes we have ancestry that's going to predispose us to certain types of character and certain nervous structure of your nervous system, and even body type and body, the development of our cells. And then sedentary behavior. So lack of movement is also one of the primary impacts on healthy fascia. So the good news is that our fascia can be rehydrated, it can be reshaped, and it can be moved into this kind of healthy matrix. And really, what they're saying now in research is if we as humanity really start taking care of our fascia, that so many other health conditions would slowly be just dissipate. So maybe that's where we begin really putting our attention. You know, they say to see changes in your muscle fibers takes usually between 5 to 8 weeks. But with fascia, it's actually, depending on the type of tissue, takes a little bit longer actually. It might change, but then sometimes it goes back. So they're saying that that's a little more like to see big long-term change is more like 6 to 24 months. Okay. So let's just talk for a few moments about what fascia is, just so that for those of you that have the curiosity. So I'm going to invite you to begin thinking of fascia as like a cellular matrix. So it's full of fibers, but it's also full of types of fluid. And sometimes tissue is more fibrous, and sometimes tissue is more fluid. And one of the, you know, Tom Myers and a couple other amazing researchers refer to the fascia as like an extracellular matrix. I think they actually call it ECM. And so this matrix begins to secrete, the cellular matrix secretes what they call fibroblasts. And I love that word, fibroblast. You know, it's like you know, when the universe blasts itself into existence. And it's kind of like this. You have this cellular matrix that blasts out, secretes out fluid that is called ground substance. So, for example, if you start reading some research about fascia, you'll see this word ground substance. And the ground substance begins to form different types of matrices, different types of tissue. Okay? So a fibroblast secretes a ground substance that's made of different particles, of different cell-like matrices that forms different types. So the first type of matrix is collagen. And the collagen is like, it's resistance to stretch. It's strong. It does stretch, but it's a little, it has more density to it. It has more proteins in it, and it holds things together. That's one of its main, collagen holds things together. So you can think of like tendons and ligaments. The next type of like cellular matrix or different type of ground substance is elastic kind of fibers, so elastin. And just like what that word means, it's much more elastic. It has less proteins. It can stretch, it can also be compressed, and it returns back to its original form. So you can think of like your skin like this. So for any of you that, you know, have had babies in your belly, you realize that your skin can stretch and it can ideally go back to its, you know, normal state. Depends how many kids you have. Okay, the vertebral column also has a lot of elastin in it because the vertebrae can twist, they go forward, they can go back, they can rotate. So they can go side. And so your vertebrae column also, for example, has a lot of elastin in it. Okay, the third type of ground substance matrix is the reticular. And the reticular is similar to collagen in that it has proteins, but it's more like a branch, like it branches out. It has many more, like a tree, and it's throughout your body. And you can see it, like the picture I just showed had a lot of reticular in it. So you see it in the muscles, but you see it a lot in the organs. So like the liver, the spleen, and you also see it, it surrounds a lot of the blood vessels and the veins. So, you know, all these types of matrices are in the ground substance. And from there, you know, you have loose connective tissue, you have dense connective tissue, you have cartilage. These are all types of fascia, really. You have bone. Bone, for example, is the strongest ground substance. It has very little fluid, but it has a lot of fiber, for example. And then you go to the opposite extreme and you have blood. So blood is almost like, you know, it's a ground substance. The ground substance is fluid-like. It's fluid tissue. It has no fibers. It's full of, like I said, plasma and cells, you know, your red and white blood cells, your platelets. So I just want you to begin to think of your whole body, everything in it, like a cellular matrix with different ground substance makeups. Sometimes it has more protein, sometimes it has less, sometimes it's more fluid, sometimes it's more fibrous. And, you know, I also just want to highlight before we begin to move is we have, you know, we have our nervous system, and our nervous system is broken up into different components. So, you know, you have your central nervous system with your brain and your spinal cord, and then we come into like the autonomic nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, and from the autonomic we come into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, a very complex, absolutely mysterious system. But you know, for example, the nervous system is one way that we really begin to connect ourselves from our internal environment to our external environment. And, you know, as yogins and yogis here, we have this, I like to look at it almost like a gift, or how fortunate we are to receive these teachings, these philosophical teachings, in how our external environment is a reflection of our internal environment, and our internal environment is a reflection of our external environment. You know, in these non-dual philosophical paradigms, you know, we know that Whether we're referring to our external environment as forms of Shakti or Prakriti, these are forms of divinity. Our body is a reflection of the earth. It's all one. So one of the bridges from the cosmos and into our body is through the nervous system. The nervous system has the mechanism to sense and communicate with the impulses all around us. So when the universe is moving through its cycles, which it does, when the universe is moving through its moods, based on the charts, the astrological charts, it communicates through our nervous system in so many ways. And when we begin to study the human system as a whole organism, we look at the prana, the pranic system. And our pranic system, as many of you already know, is known to be a beautiful network of channels through the fascia. So our nervous system sends so many of its messages not through the prana, through the fascia. Our mind patterns and our emotional patterns surf the pranic current through our body. So hence, our body is a reflection of what's going on in our mind. If we have, very dogmatic, rigid thought patterns, then your body becomes very rigid. If we tend to be more open-minded and fluid, then our body becomes more fluid. And so much of that is a reflection of this pranic system and the fascia. And our nervous system will begin to mirror the web, the collective web. In the collective web is ancestry. In the collective web is social constructs and cultural belief systems and values and morals, and so this is fed through the collective matrix and down into our nervous system and from there into our bodies. So as yogis and yoginis, when we spend time working with our nervous system, and then even more specifically how we work with the nervous system is to work with our pranic system and to work with our awareness. So these pranayama meditation practices play such a big role in your fascia. In the yoga traditions, it's like the sushumna, your main channel up and down your spine, is the home of grace, is the home of the collective consciousness descends down into our sushumna that yoga teachings teach us. It's like each inhale and exhale is the process of embracing the universal consciousness and sharing our impulses out into the collective. This is happening, they say, with each breath that we take. So I just wanted to spend a few moments just really reminding all of you, we talk about this anatomy of the fascia, but I really want to bring it back to the mystical, because so much of how we can approach the healthiness of our fascia is working with the mind, the meditation, and our energy and our breath. Okay, so lots to share that I've shared. I think before we dive in, I just wanted to say, if you do really want to take, a lot more proactiveness with your fascia and the healthiness of it, I highly encourage you to move into Tom Meyer's work. Today's practice is going to be based on a lot of his lines that he highlights. I hope to get into all of them. He has like 7 primary trains. They're like meridians of fascia. So there's like a back line, a front line, a lateral line, the lines of the arms. You have a superficial back line, a superficial front line, but then you have a deep back line, a deep front line. You have the functional lines. So, in order to work with myofascial releasing, if you work with these lines, you will invite a lot more connection between all the different parts. So when you work with myofascial releasing with the asana, okay, and with the balls and with the props, it's important that the main objective of the main the main cue for you is to turn inside. It's like it requires an incredible amount of attentiveness and listening and attuning. It's a lot of open space, and you are feeling. There's a gentleness. So if there's any kind of shooting pain, you want to ease off immediately. So it's not a practice of enduring pain, but it is a practice of attuning to what's tender and sitting with the tenderness. So you can have like myofascial releasing with yin, but you can also have it with vinyasa. So we work with holding. Ideally with the holds, you want to work with at least a minute, sometimes up to 2 minutes when you're working with the holding. So you're stretching and you're compressing, which is creating more hydration, okay? So you're hydrating your fascia through the stretching and the compressing. Slow, fluid movement is also a key practice for healthy fascia, just slow, very fluid-like. And so when you find like tender spots, when you're holding, this is where we begin to roll around and find different angles. So you might be still for a few moments and then roll just a few, literally millimeters, pause, roll a few millimeters, pause. Okay, so for those of you that are new to some of the practice. Do we have any comments or questions that anyone would like to highlight at this point before we move into your bodies? Okay, amazing. So I just want to invite you to place your camera just so I can definitely see your bodies. It will be easier for me, maybe even for you as well. So the very first position I'd like you to find is ideally a Siddhasana. So a Siddhasana is you can sit with your blanket or you can sit with your block. Amazing. Okay, so a Siddhasana is a cross-legged seat, and ideally your ankles are in front of one another. And then if you're nursing any knee issues, or even if you just want more this relaxation that I'm talking about, you can put blocks and blankets underneath the knees, okay? Okay, and then wherever you are, I'm just gonna invite you to place your hands on the legs and to close your eyes. And then with your eyes closed and the hands on the legs, allow the throat to open and begin to turn your attention to your breathing. And we'll start by just simply witnessing your natural breath moving in and out of your nose. And begin to deepen your breath. Allow the breath to become just a bit weightier. And notice the breath as it traverses down deep into the lungs. Very gently invite the hands to come to the heart. Anjali Mudra, hands in prayer. Anchor the base of your wrist right into the bone of the chest. So there's really that connection being made. And we'll bow the forehead to the heart for a moment. Just to acknowledge that oneness. Just to honor that oneness, I'll invite us to start the practice with one Om, okay? So with the eyes gazing inward, invite the throat to open. And give the body an incredibly long exhale. And we'll inhale for one Om. Good. And very gently release the hands and slowly allow the eyes to open. So when you're ready, I'll find you meet you on your hands and your knees. Okay, you can move the props to the side. And I'm going to invite you to do what you need to do to find your way into a downward dog to begin with, and no rush, okay? Please take your time. If you need to start in child's pose, you can start in child's pose. If you need to move through a few moments of cat-cow, feel free. We won't be holding this downward dog for too long. So when you're ready, I'll meet you in an Adho Mukha Svanasana, downward dog. And in your downward dog this morning, don't worry so much about the heels touching. Let the underarms, kind of right where the armpit is, lift away from the earth. And then from the base of the heart, really allow the hands to root. And from the base of the heart, let the pelvis lift. Let the knee joints soften. And really, I'm going to invite this downward dog to have that conscious releasing of the head, the neck, jawline. Like there's holding being released throughout the layers and fibers in the upper back, the neck, and any tension in the mind, any worry, concern, doubt. Let that all kind of release here as you deepen your breath. And we'll be here for 3 more breaths. Good. And then on your next inhale, slide forward to a plank and lower yourself all the way down onto the earth. Untuck your toes, take your hands a bit wider. And on the next inhale, we're going to sweep up for a cobra pose and open the heart and open your throat. And then as you breathe out, ripple yourself back down to the earth. So it's real fluid-like, okay? Again, inhale, peel the heart up, head up, press into your feet. And exhale, let it float back down. Okay, so 3 more on your own, real fluid-like. Good, on your last one, come up and we'll just move through some swaying actions of the shoulders. I call it the dancing cobra. Let the head release, let your neck release as you roll down. Gazing over the shoulder. Okay, last sway. And then pull your hands back and give yourself a full breath in, lifting. And then peel the heart all the way back down. Okay? And then press it all the way back, sit bones towards your heels, tuck your toes, long child's pose. Come back onto the hands and knees, chin to chest, round your back body. And then release, and once again, lift your knees for a downward dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Press into the hands. Slide the top of your thighs back. That's it. Good. 2 more, drinking your breath to be nice and full. 2 more breaths. Good. And then take your time and step to the top of the mat for an Uttanasana forward fold. As many steps as you need. Take your feet so they're hip distance. Soften the knees as much as you need. On your next inhale, lengthen the chest forward, Ardha Uttanasana. And on the exhale, fold for Uttanasana. Again, inhale, lengthen, Ardha Uttanasana. Feel free to take fingertips to earth. Fold, Uttanasana, breath with movement. Good, 2 more. Breathe in, Ardha Uttanasana. Breathe out, feel free to soften knees, fold in. Good, 1 more. Breathe in, long spine. Breathe out, fold into yourself. Good, and then press down through your feet. Inhale all the way up to the sky. Stretch up with your arms, look up at the hands, open the heart up. And on your exhale, fold the hands right into the heart center. Beautiful. Release your hands by your side. Just take a moment to really feel the earth beneath your feet. So you really have that release of your bones into the ground. And we'll just flow for a few moments here together, okay? Press down into the bones of your feet and inhale your arms all the way up with the heart. And on your exhale, fold in, Uttanasana, soften the knees, fold in, exhale the air. On the next inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, stretch your chest forward. As you breathe out, big step back with your right foot, right knee to the earth. On your inhale, take your time, arms rise up. As you breathe out, just let the pelvis come down. Good. Inhale, reach up, back, full breath in. Exhale, spread the fingertips, downward dog. Take your time, hips up and back. Breathe in, forward to a plank pose. Breathe out for low push-up or the earth. I leave it to you. Good. Inhale, rise open for cobra or upward dog. Full breath in. And then however you want to get there, exhale back to downward dog. Full breath in. Washing breath out. And press into your hands and inhale the right leg up, stretch it to the sky. And take your time, place the foot all the way forward towards your hand and lower your back knee. Make any adjustments you need to find stability. And then inhale your arms all the way back up. Lean back with your arms, open your throat, pelvis forward. Exhale the pelvis down. Inhale the arm bones back and up. And then on your next exhale, take your time. Big step to the top of the mat. Uttanasana, forward fold, feet real wide, bow in. Good. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana again, chest forward. Exhale the spine down into a forward fold. Feel the earth beneath you. Reach up to the sky. Breathe in, stretch up, look up. We're going to keep flowing. Exhale, bow in. Uttanasana once again. Soften the knee joints. Good. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana. Stretch forward. Use blocks or shins. This time as you breathe out, big step back with your left foot, left knee to the ground. Take your time as you sweep the arms all the way up. As you breathe out, attune to the breath and take your pelvis more forward and down. Good. Reach your wrists up and back. Full breath in. And take your time. Spread the fingertips, downward dog, hips up and back. Exhale the air. Good. When you're ready, ripple forward to plank pose as you breathe in. Feel free to lower the knees today. Good. Exhale to low push over the earth. I leave it to you. Good. Inhale, rise to the sky, cobra or upward dog. And however you want to get there, downward dog, hips up and back. Spreading the fingertips wide, notice the ground beneath you. And then press into the ground with your hands and inhale the left leg up behind you, sweep it up fluid-like. Place the foot all the way forward as you breathe out. Take your time, set the foot where you need. And rise up to the sky with your arms in line with your ears. Let the pelvis settle down, let it be weighty. Good. And again, inhale the arms up and back, especially the wrists. And take your time on your next exhale. Big step to the top of the mat, feet wide, fold in. Good. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, chest forward. Exhale, bow in. Press into the feet. Inhale, rise all the way up to the sky. Look up, arms up. And on your next exhale, fold the hands right into the heart. Give a little bow, forehead to the heart. Let the breath settle. And take a moment to attune to the rhythms of the heart, the mind, of the environment around you. Good, and gently release your hands. And please find your little ball that I invited all of you to have. So if you don't have the ball, then you could try using a block. I think we can try to see how that would work. We're going to start right away with our feet. There are hundreds of pressure points in our feet that impact so many of the fascia lines in your body. So, you know, put your feet up to your best friend or your kids or your partner and make them rub your feet. But if they're not going to rub your feet, then you have this. So we'll start standing with your ball, and we're literally going to start with the right foot. So you just place your feet more like they're hip distance, so you're not going to fall over. I usually plant my hands on my hips, and we'll start with the right foot. And you literally just start rolling the ball underneath the foot. If you feel a place that's tender, which I tend to feel it right in the center often, you put more pressure, a little more pressure, and hold. Roll around, find some pressure maybe potentially, and hold. Now, just because you're not feeling tenderness doesn't mean that there's not anything happening. So spend time rolling around the heels, around the balls of the toes and the toes. Lean a little more weight, a little more compression. Now you can even place the ball right underneath the heel and press down. Good, about 15 more seconds. Good. And slowly we'll move to the other side. So for those of you that don't have a ball, you can place your foot on a block and just kind of lean to the edge of the block with your foot. Okay? You might even be lifting the block up a little bit on the other side as you put pressure down on the opposite side. For those of you that don't have a ball. Okay, so we're working with the left side of the foot now. See if you can spend time working on the toes as well. So the myofascial releasing does require our breath to have a weightiness to it. So I'm going to encourage you not to be holding the breath. And ideally it's not shallow, it's deep and mindful breathing. Good, about 15 more seconds. Again, where there's tenderness, stay still and put some pressure. Good, last full cycle of breath. Okay, amazing. We are slowly going to find ourselves seated on a blanket in Dandasana. Okay, so take your time. If you have any other kind of block that's you can sit on to just get the pelvis a little bit elevated would help. And we are now moving into our calf. Okay. So I'm going to invite you to start with the ball. And again, if you have no ball but you have a block, you can kind of use the block and move it, hold it with your hands to find some trigger points on the calf. So we'll start with the left calf. And so I lean back, place the weight in my hands. And so if I'm working my left calf, I'm going to bend my right knee. And I literally pick my pelvis up and I'm going to roll muscles. And again, where you feel tenderness, I invite you to pause. So to roll the ball, I kind of have to move my pelvis back and I got to move my pelvis forward. So the tight calf muscle is part of the back line, the superficial back line. We also have a deep back line. The calf muscle has been incredibly linked to lack of mobility in the hip joint, and it's because of the fascia lines. Okay, 10 more seconds on this calf. So some of us might think that it's where actually it's the fascia in your calf. The hips that are tight, people think. Often that is the culprit. Amazing. Okay, and we will switch. Start with the ball right in kind of what I call the butt of the calf, so the middle of the calf. And then once you find a place for the ball or the block, you might have to pick the hips up and begin rolling. This is the opportunity for you to feel and attune. Using a block, you might, like Rachel, see if you can actually move the calf, and then you might have to do more pausing and compression than rolling. You know what I mean? And then you might have to move the block. You might be pressing the block a little more into the calf. It's a different technique. Yeah, try your best. Yeah, amazing. That's it. Rolling the pelvis back and forward. Okay, like my last 10 seconds. Some of you will feel one calf a little more than the other. Amazing. Okay, so we'll finish up with that calf. So today's ball rolling is a full body. Ideally, we're hitting some of the primary meridian lines of the fascia. It's almost like brushing your teeth for the fascia lines. Now we're going to do the thigh and the hip. So I'm going to invite you to come onto your left forearm. And we're going to place the ball or the block on the outside of your left thigh, down right above the knee. So we've been working with the quadricep muscle. And so some of you will place the block there, okay? And then once as you place the block and the ball right on the outside of your thigh, you're gonna lift your pelvis up, okay? I have my back foot. So with my the ball on my left leg, my right knee is bent, and I come higher to my right toes. So my right knee heel is lifted. And then I lift my pelvis up, and I begin rolling the ball on the outside of my thigh. And then I roll my chest forward so I can roll the ball more to the front of my thigh. And this tends to be quite tender. Some of you may know the famous saying that our ancestry lives in our thigh muscles. And there's a lot of truth to that, about this collective consciousness and some of the meridian lines down into our thighs. Where you feel tenderness, just pause. And then you're going to roll the ball when you're more up the thigh, and you can really pick the ball up and place it higher. then for some of you, you're already ready to roll the ball on the outside of your hip. So you're kind of rolling around here, just like the ball. You're rolling with the ball. And you can roll the ball on the outside of your hip. And for me, I kind of come a little bit back, and I'm getting into some of even my glutes. So after you get a little bit into the glute and the butt and the outside of your hip, then you're going to roll around back down to the thigh again. The outer hip, I'm going to invite you to spend just a few moments on the outer hip if you haven't already. And a little bit on the butt. It's quite calm and tender there, and so you can just pause wherever there's tenderness. Take a couple deep breaths and really be with what's happening. Good, and last 2 breaths. Amazing. And we'll switch sides, okay? So begin to think of yourself in the middle of like a massage session or an osteopathic session where they are treating the fascia as one whole system. So what you're doing right now is impacting so many of the chains through the whole body. Be really present for yourself. So we're coming onto the right side. Place the ball more towards right above the knee or the block above the knee. So your left knee is bent. I have my left heel lifted. Ideally, you place your elbow to begin with right underneath your shoulder joint. You get a lot more stability that way. And then lift your pelvis and begin to roll the ball by moving your pelvis up and down. And where you feel tender, just pause for a few moments. Good, and keep going. And for those of you using a block, you'll just keep moving the block up and down the outer thigh and the outer hip. A lot of fascia specialists and therapists that work in integrative medicine or alternative medicine say that actually the conversation that you have with your fascia, like imagine yourself talking to your fascia, that in and of itself can change the texture of it. So as I move through these myofascial releasings, I really just have this little dialogue with my fascia, like, you know, here I am, I'm here to invite any release, any tension from you. Thank you for all of your amazing powers. Good, about 15 more seconds. See if you can find your way up to the outer hip and the glutes. If you're just working with the block, you move the block to the outer hip. And then you pause wherever you're feeling any knots. Good. Okay. Amazing. So these were some big muscle groups. Once as we communicate to the top layer, it puts some pressure with the ball. It communicates to all the different layers of the tissue. And we're going to do a few more of the ball ones. I'd like to do the ball in the chest. So the chest holds an incredible amount of very important tissue that communicates to the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system. So we're going to place the ball kind of right underneath the collarbone area. Now, for women that are large-breasted, often we might have to place the ball on top of a blanket like this, okay? So once we get the ball right below this collarbone region here, we're going to roll it around, and it's going to work with the intercostal muscles, the page, move the ball over towards the joint, and getting into pec major, pec minor, and several of the other muscle groups, but the fascia that surrounds these muscle groups, okay? So it feels a little awkward at first, getting yourself settled. Once as you find the place for the ball, you press down through your hands, and you can lift your pelvis up, and you begin to roll the ball around. So the pelvis is lifted off the ground slightly. You need a little bit of strength. And then you find some pressure points along the chest. Rolling yourself a little bit over towards the shoulder, towards the armpit. Again, pausing, listening, feeling. And for you that don't have a ball, it's very similar. You're just placing the block and the corners of the block. You're really working with the corners of the block. Good, about 10 more seconds. Good, and now we're gonna work with the other side. So place the ball, again, right underneath the collarbone region, and you do wanna work the ball down all the way towards the center of the chest, and then over towards the armpit, back up towards the shoulder, and over. So you're kind of creating a little circle around the right side now, or the left side, depending on what you started with. So I used to work for years with breast cancer patients. And the research with breast cancer patients have showed that when the intercostal muscles are very tight and the fascia is very tight, it's very difficult for proper blood flow. So this network of fascia in the chest here is very, very important for health prevention for many women. Good, about 10 more seconds on this side. Okay, amazing, my friends. We're gonna come on to our backs. Bend your knees, place your feet onto the mat, and now we're gonna work back, okay? So you're gonna place the ball, and you have to lift your pelvis for this, in the upper back, kind of the upper trapezius. And I place my hands down, feet wide, lift the pelvis, and I'm rolling the ball up around my upper back. And over towards your shoulder. And all the way up to the base of the neck. Sometimes the ball wants to kind of roll out. Pause where you feel tension. And you can roll the ball to the outside of the shoulder joint as well, and then underneath towards where the shoulder, the back of the shoulder and the armpit are meeting. And then all the way up towards the base of the neck. Listen and feel. Find stillness and pause where there's tension. Amazing. Good. Find a little tender spot and pause for the last 5 seconds. Good. Deepen your breath. Okay. Remove the ball, lower your pelvis, and take the ball onto the opposite side. For me, I need to take my feet wide and really ground down through all 4 corners of the feet for this one. Use your hands, press them down, and then lift the pelvis up. And for those of you without a ball, you'll just be placing the block in different parts of the shoulder. That's it. Amazing. Keep it fluid. Keep it gentle. Good. Notice the breath moving in and out of the nose for the last deep cycle of breath here. And let the last cycle of breath be a still moment right on any kind of tender spot. Okay, amazing. Remove the ball, lower your pelvis, take one hand to the heart, one hand to the belly, and just be with the inner body for a few moments. Be real present for what's happening on the inside. Beautiful. And the eyes gently open. Roll to whatever side is most comfortable. Slide your way onto your hands and your knees. Good. And we're going to move through some just a few asanas now that really hit some of these major lines of the meridians of fascia. Okay, and so we will start with this infamous downward dog. So the downward dog hits this superficial back line, which is one of the most important lines to keeping your body upright. So coming onto your hands and knees, spread your fingertips wide. Invite the index fingers to point forward. Give a little commitment of the finger pads, and then lift your knees if you haven't already. Don't worry about your heels touching the ground in this downward dog. Feet are a little wider than hip distance. And then with the commitment of your finger pads, begin to attune to your tricep muscles and invite the tricep muscles to really engage towards each other. Yes, the upper arms are hugging towards each other. So let the arm muscles work so that you can now let the shoulder and the neck release, and the upper back muscles release a little more. Let the weightiness of the tongue let the fibers of tissue along the neck to relax more. Give yourself a deep cycle of breath. Inhale through your nose. Long exhale through the mouth. Good. Now look at your feet and begin to lift the toes off the mat if you can, even just millimeters off the mat, and it will fire up your legs a little more. Yeah. Beautiful. And then you can let your toes melt back down, and then just look at your thighs and begin to activate your thigh muscles a little more. Move your thighs up and back. Press into your hands. Give yourself one deep cycle of breath. Amazing. Walk your hands and your feet towards each other in the middle of the mat, hands to the hips, and come all the way up. Good. And then come center of the mat. Good. And we're going to take your hands. Rotate your toes slightly towards each other just for a moment. Good. And we're going to move into Parsvakonasana. Externally rotate your left foot 90 degrees. Bend into your left knee 90 degrees. And take your forearm to your thigh. So I'm just going to invite a slight internal rotation of your right foot. Okay. So for those of you that want to stay here with your forearm on your thigh, feel free to go a bit deeper. You can take your hand to a block on the inside of the ankle today. Good. And then we're going to lean the body back and extend your right arm up and over the ear. Okay, so we get into the lateral line here. We're also getting into some of the front lines and the back lines, the legs, and the lateral lines of the arms, the lateral lines of the body. Okay, so allow the breath to be full. Lean more into your back body with shoulders and torso. Wrap the pinky finger of your extended right hand down towards the earth. And then move the wrist joint back. Turn the sternum bone a little more up. Open your throat. Breathe in and out of your lungs. Hold the pose. From your belly, press into your feet. Lean the ears back. Last cycle of breath. Feel your feet press deeply into the earth. Keep the legs as they are. Just rise up for a warrior two. And then hands to the hips. Good. And straighten your left leg. And we'll move to the other side. Internally rotate your left. Externally rotate your right. Bend into your right knee. Ideally close to 90 degrees. Forearm to thigh. Hand to hip. And this is a beautiful place to stay. Really listen to your body. So with the myofascial releasing, we keep it gentle. It's not too fierce and no pain. To go deeper, you would place your hand on the inside of the ankle. Use your arm to open up the knee to track over the second or third toe of your foot. So really look for that line. And then you're going to lean your body back and extend your left arm up and over your ear. Literally wrap the pinky finger towards the earth so the arm bone rotates internally. And then move the upper arm and the wrist joint back. Really fire up the left leg. And then let your breath flow as you open your heart to the sky. So we're holding the pose. Sweep the face with a sweetness. Press into your legs. Stretch out through your lifted arm. Move your ears back. Open your throat. Last full cycle of breath. And then feel your feet. Press into those bones. Rise up for warrior two. And then hands to the hips and straighten your right leg. Good. Internally rotate your right. Externally rotate your left. Take a big step to the top of your mat. Inhale the arms up. Exhale, we fold. Good. Inhale, lengthen your chest forward. And take a big step back to downward dog. Just for 2 cycles of breath. Big stretch in your downward dog. And to send your knees to the earth, we're going to find your blanket. And I'm going to invite the blanket to be placed onto the mat. And you can place the blanket as thick as you'd like. It's for your knees, okay? And we're going to come standing onto our knees. So the knees are hip distance. The toes are tucked. And we're going to work with Ustrasana, really working the front line. So the front line connects all the way from your toes, up your shins, up your knees, up your thighs, up through the belly, all through the organs of your frontal body, the chest, all the way up through your neck, all the way up to the base of the skull. Okay, so camel is an amazing pose for the front line. Downward dog was an amazing pose for the back line. So with your camel pose, I'm going to invite the fingertips ideally to point up towards your shoulder blades and to plant the hands onto your low back, fingertips up towards the shoulder blades. We're also going to invite the toes to be tucked. If that's too much on your upper back or your neck, you can place your hands like you're going to plant them into pockets of your pants. Okay. Ankles hug to find the midline. Pelvis comes forward. Heart lifts. And then literally your forehead and your ears move back. Okay? And that might be a beautiful place to stay, inviting the breath to stay full. Otherwise, we move through the little cycle of actions again. Ankles hug. Pelvis comes forward. Lift up your sternum bone. Curl the forehead and ears back. Pause and feel. Go deeper, ankles hug. Pelvis slightly forward. Lift your sternum. Now curl the forehead more back. And now some of you literally access the top of your heels. Okay, otherwise just keep your hands up. Ankles hug. Slides forward, sternum lifts, lean the forehead back, keep your neck long. We're going to hold. As you breathe in and out of your body, really feel the front of the body open. Keep the pelvis leaning forward. Three more breaths. Good to come out, tailbone scoops. You can take your hands to your low back. Lift your sternum, head's the last thing to rise. Untuck your toes and just come sitting onto your heels for a few cycles of breath. Really stay present. Amazing. Okay, so now we're going to get into what we call the it's kind of the complex spiral line. It's a crazy meridian of the fascia that moves and spirals around the legs and the hips and the spine, all the way up through the neck and the arms. So I'm going to invite a blanket to be placed underneath you for those of you that want to be extra comfortable. Come lying onto your back, please. And as you come lying onto your back, we're going to bend the knees, feet wide. And then you're going to take your hips over to, let's say, the right. Extend your arms out like a T. And then from here, as your hips bent to the right, you're going to extend your left leg all the way out to the right. And then you're going to keep your right knee bent. And then you're going to gaze over your left shoulder. Now, for those of you that want to go deeper, you'd actually take your right hand to the outside of the left foot or ankle. And to go very deep, you reach around with your left hand to find your bent right foot. We're gazing over the left shoulder. Let the bones of the body relax. And breathe down into your lungs from your nostrils. So ideally for each of these poses, we want to hold for a minute or two, sometimes even up to 5 minutes. Okay, last 2 full cycles of breath here. Allow yourself to be dedicated, like a devotee to your inner body. Good, and then very gently gaze towards the right hand. Release the feet if you had them. And then begin to roll both knees up towards the sky. And then we're going to roll the knees over to the left or to the other side. Good. And now we're going to gaze over the left or the right shoulder. And then you're going to extend your right leg straight out towards the left. Yeah. Good. Keep your left knee bent underneath the right leg. And then from there, you can stay here, really letting the right arm bone relax to the earth, the right shoulder. Even the right rib cage has that weightiness towards the earth. Okay, and to go deeper, you would extend the right leg and hold the foot or outer ankle or outer shin with your left hand to go deeper. And reach around with your right hand to find the left foot. Yeah. If that feels too uncomfortable or too deep, then you would release. So this is our last kind of asana that provides amazing myofascial releasing. Allow the intimacy to rise as you turn to your breathing, as you turn to the sensations of the shape. Good. Last 2 cleansing cycles of breath. Good, and then gaze your eyes to the sky. Release the feet if you had them. Draw your knees up to the sky. Good. And then plant the feet down. And we are going to move into a Shavasana. So for your Shavasana, if you have a bolster, amazing. If not, I'd invite the blankets to be rolled up for underneath your knees, okay? So you can roll up the blanket for underneath your knees, or you place the bolster. I'm also going to invite you to have anything that you'd like to get really cozy to keep yourself warm. So if you want to put anything over you, then feel free. To set up for your Shavasana, I'm going to invite the feet to be just a little wider than the hip distance, not too much wider than that. And then when you lift your pelvis, invite the thighs to internally rotate. So I'm going to invite the pelvis to lift up slightly, internally rotate your thighs, scoop the tailbone after you do that, then lower the pelvis, and then come onto your backs. And allow your feet to fall open a little wider than hip distance. Just a bit, and let your hands, palms open to the sky. Although some of the practices might have seemed very subtle, they have very deep intentions and deep outcomes that are sometimes difficult to receive here with the cognitive mind. So what we do is just let the Shavasana integrate all of your work. The Shavasana is known as an integrator. Allow your awareness to float towards the toes in your right foot and begin to relax the toes of the right foot. Like the plasma in the bones becomes more fluid-like in the entire left foot. And then allow your awareness to float to the right foot, and toe by toe, allow it to become a light and fluid-like. And allow the bones of your left shin to soften. The bones of your right shin to soften. And allow the left thigh to not only become weighty, but to begin melting, like all the fibers of all these amazing muscles in your left thigh. Imagine them becoming very fluid. And then the muscles in your right thigh become very soft, supple, relaxed. Let the bones of the pelvic bowl become one with the earth. You release the weightiness of your pelvis down into the earth. And let your belly open itself and relax. Allow your heart to soften. Allow your right shoulder to become one with the earth. Invite your left shoulder to be held by the earth. Allow the matrix of the throat to soften. Allow the structure of the skull to release itself. And as it releases itself, the matrix of the skull begins to branch into the matrix of the cosmos. So everything in you is open and soft. Everything in you is one. You are at one with what's around you. Slowly allow your awareness to meet that space where your body and earth become one. So just notice where your body and the ground meet. And then begin to become aware of your natural breath moving in and out of the chest. And begin to deepen your breath into your body as a way to deepen your connection with this grand nature, of energy, of prana, of consciousness. And from that grandness, very mindfully become aware of the bones in your hands and your feet. The hands and the feet are one of the primary ways the collective consciousness unfolds itself through humans, what we walk towards, what we reach for. That's why the hands and the feet are so intricate. And so you can awaken the hands and the feet when you're ready, and you can begin to bend the knees slowly, planting the feet onto the earth, drinking the breath in and out of the body. And when you're ready, you can roll to whatever side feels most welcoming. Pause on your side for a few cycles of breath. And as we begin to shift the literally the waves of the brain, kind of moving from these theta waves up to more awake state waves. Just for those of you that have been deep into the theta wave, just notice the sensation of it. It holds a very unique purpose for our cognitive mind, for the nervous system. And we transition real slowly. I'll meet you in a tall seat with your eyes closed, so please take your time. And as you find your way to a tall seat, eyes gaze inward. Feel free to create any kind of comfortable covering for yourself. I invite the pelvis to be elevated. Good. And just allow your body and your fascia to read its environment as being upright now. One way to support that is just to take your awareness to the crown of the head. And then I'll invite you to fold the hands to the center of the heart, a little bow, forehead down to the hands. And we just take a moment to acknowledge our oneness. So many times we become literally stuck like glue in being separated or fragmented. And we literally just simply forget how whole we are. And how our oneness is nothing but a reflection of the oneness that's all around us. So we'll seal our time with a communal breath, okay? Exhale the air all the way out of your throat. And take a full breath down into your bodies. And a cleansing breath, relaxing the shoulders, the arm bones. You can release the hands, open the eyes. Thank you so much for this beautiful journey through your subtle layers and for joining me today. If you have any questions, I'm going to invite them to be shared here. And I'll email out a recorded version for all of you. Also with like a little anatomy handout on what we talked about today.
Thank you so much.